Back here, 615 Sessions podcast on the getbeast.com Zoom line. Happy December. We are 1 month away from this godforsaken year of 2020 being over. We are happy to be celebrating that momentous occasion with our friends Emily Proud of WKRN and Joe Rexrode of The Athletic, and Robbie and Rexrode, or Rexrode and Robbie on 102.5 The Game, wherever it is that you can get the frequency here on the 615 Sessions podcast. Hello, friends.
Hello, Buck.
Hello.
Nice hat.
You can compliment my fashion because you clearly know nothing else about what's going on in the world, that you thought Emily's AirPods were earrings before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a gaffe. Now, it's interesting that Emily has never had her ears pierced, and I understand she had a long explanation. You can say that. You can also explain here on the podcast if you like, Emily. But it makes me think of my 10-year-old daughter. We had a huge thing, actually for a couple of years now, about the ears being pierced, and they are pierced. And I thought like it should be more like 14, but you are now, not that I've already lost. I've lost the battle, but I could win the war. And now you are an example for me. Go to my daughter that you do not need to have your ears pierced.
What does it matter to you if she's 10 or 14 that she has her ears pierced? What is the deal?
I mean, not trying to like be a Puritan, but I feel like that seems more like a teenage thing to do, right? Isn't it?
My mom actually pierced. By the way, we're going to talk about the Titans. We're going to talk about Sarah Fuller, the kicker from Vanderbilt. We have much to discuss. Mike Vrabel hates Joe Rexrode. We have many things to talk about. You're on the podcast today, but of course we begin with ear piercings. So my little sister was adopted at about 18 months, and she did not, for the first probably almost 3 years of her life, have enough hair to discern her as female. So my mom thought that it might suit her better if we got her ears pierced. She was 3 years old the first time she got her ears pierced. And then her hair came in, I think, closer to like 5 or 6 or something like that. But for those first few years of life, Lily Reising was discerned as female only by her ear piercing. So some people need it, Joe.
We've got the full range of examples here.
This is the circle of life right here on the podcast. Emily, you have yet to say anything today.
I know. I don't want to cause any beef, but when Rexrode turned on Zoom, the first thing he said was, "You look different," then didn't explain it. And then thankfully you paused before giving away my age. But right now, Rexrode, we are not off to a great start. I'm still concerned. You never specified whether the different was like bad or horrible or okay, or you said it was because I was wearing earrings, which I'm not. So then I never really got the explanation, but that's okay. Earrings, I've played sports my whole life, so I was just never able to wear them. I don't mind people that like them, that enjoy them. I don't know, never got around to it. So
this can get a lot worse too. I mean, let's be clear here.
Oh, 1,000%. We have,
especially when we all get together.
I was about to say, Rexrode hasn't even made any sexually inappropriate jokes yet. But he has commented. You're typically the first one to lob the dick joke out there, but it's okay. We got plenty of time. Emily agrees. See, we have.
Is that true?
Oh, 1,000%. Emily.
I made dick jokes last time. Remind me. Dude, my brain is mush. Remind me of the dick joke.
Yeah, let's go ahead and call back the dick jokes. That's a good way to start the podcast off. Don't do it.
We're having the opposite effect right now, where we're creating something out of nothing. I think, it's not just, I'm not going to say it, but it's poop too, which seems to be
you see how confused I am?
Well, so.
You're confused because you're old and you're doddering, and you have brain fog. But who does not have brain fog right now? That's a transition. Are the Tennessee Titans as they round into form? They've reclaimed their seat atop the AFC South. They're back in the postseason. Everybody's happy, except for Emily Proud, because Joe Rexrode said she looks different on the Zoom today. And Mike Vrabel, apparently, who's worse when they win with us on the Zoom calls afterwards. So I guess neither of you went with us to Indianapolis, and neither of you were were subjugated to the terrible press box that Lucas Oil Stadium has. It makes me very nauseous every time I'm up there. But the thing that stood out the most from our vantage point, and to everybody watching at home, I'm sure, is Derrick Henry is the offensive line with a bunch of parts and dudes that should not play as well as they played and absolutely kicked the Colts' ass on Sunday. And so it goes to a larger point, I guess, where we're looking at this time of year, now officially in December. You know that because I'm wearing a Santa hat. And the Derrick Henry season is upon us. But against, I guess what's a reasonable expectation? Like, do we think that what they did last year with Derrick is sustainable or repeatable in a way that they kind of have a blueprint for the rest of the season and into the playoffs, that you can just ride this dude for as long as he's physically able to take you there? Rex, you can start.
I mean, look, I think it is their plan. It's the blueprint. It works. It'll probably work pretty well this month. I don't know if it works again in the postseason. And obviously they've had injuries, but look, you got to be impressed with how they've been able to deal with some of those, put in different people. And I think in this particular game, I think Derrick Henry's been fantastic all year, whether he's had numbers or not. He's had some games where his defense has not let him have numbers. He would have run for 250 at Cincinnati if the defense didn't screw it up, right? I think he has been unbelievable all year. At some point it ends, it changes, he slows down, he gets an injury, but the guy is unbelievable. And I thought, from my vantage point of watching that game on television, that offensive line was awfully dominant. I thought he had more downhill, 3 yards before any contact runs than he's had in most games this year. Of course, DeForest Buckner's missing and all that, and that's a big deal. But I still feel like this offensive line looks like it's surging, maybe with this reformed group. David Quessenberry, to me, guys, I'm blown away. He's a third-string tackle. He's a guy, obviously we know the story about David Quessenberry, 3 years of battling cancer. But when I've rewatched that game and rewatched the end of the Ravens game, I'm blown away by how you could have a guy like that sitting on your bench and perform like he has. Seriously. And then Nate Davis, there's a little more attention on this now. Dan Orlovsky had some breakdown. I think he's turning into like I don't know about star, but a really good young offensive lineman. So, look, I mean, they're going to batter some of these people coming up, like the Jags and Lions. And Derrick Henry, frankly, I think the MVP is Patrick Mahomes to have and hold. But I think Derrick Henry, if he can get to 2,000, is going to have some mention for that, which is saying something in this league in 2020.
Emily, you think he can win it?
No, because he's not a quarterback. But I do think that I wish that there was a way that you could create a different award, one just for a quarterback and one for Derrick Henry. But I still think that if you really, nitpick and talk about the award as the most valuable player to a certain team, it's got to be Derrick Henry. I mean, it was very evident when Ryan Tannehill walked his way into the end zone and everybody else went to the other side, and he was able to go in untouched just because so many people are counting for Derrick Henry. And I mean, it was just crazy. His first contact was always linebackers. I mean, he was already 3-4 yards in before he hit any contact, just because their line was so good. And not to take away from it necessarily, but I mean, it's hard not to notice that Jonnu Smith completely disappeared. Obviously, they're using him as help a lot there too. But I think just Derrick Henry in December is exactly what football and the NFL is about. This is the time of year that guys start making what they call business decisions, is whether or not they want to tackle Derrick Henry. And it gets colder. And I just think of Henry on December 27th in Green Bay, Wisconsin on Sunday Night Football. You don't want to tackle that guy. Absolutely not. Especially if you're a safety that's, he's got 60 pounds on you. That's not something that you want to do by any means. And so it's not, a cliche to call it D-Hember and to get all excited about Derrick Henry's resurgence, because it's not it's a recipe for success. And I think that, you ride him until you can't anymore, because it makes the rest of your offense go.
D-Hember it's so stupid. I hate that.
I've never heard that before.
Stupid. It's so stupid, but it's so real. Like, that's the thing.
You've never heard it before.
It's not just like some crazy thing that is out there and people are just making it up because he's had really good Decembers the last 2 years. It's it's a thing. Like this is the time of year when you're supposed to run the ball, when you're supposed to put the ball on the ground and go, and it works. I mean, I like it. I like D. Hember. I'll take it.
Who came up with that?
Zach Lyons from the Football and Other F Words podcast, which is why that I hate that it has legs, because I love all three of those guys. They're among my favorite people who exist in our media sphere. But no slight against you two. But the D. Hember thing is something that they used to troll me for a good while the Titans were still looking while the Titans were still looking for an offensive coordinator, because they kept telling me that Sean Mannion was going to be the coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. And it's a long running joke that nobody here is going to get. And so now I'm pissed about it all over again. And nobody understands why. Regardless, Emily, the thing that you pointed out there with Derrick Henry and this being the time of year that you're supposed to do the thing that the Titans are best at doing, it really is, as cliche as it is, and this whole narrative is wrought with cliches, because you talk about next man up. I mean, that was the difference between the Titans and the Colts, to me, is that the depth players for the Titans who have been called into service absolutely kicked the ass of the Colts players who were in the same position. Now, maybe they've had more time to do so, but the ability there, or at least the execution there, from a depth on depth perspective, to me really, really stood out. But the thing that I think bodes in their favor is, for as big a deal, as people are making of there only being 2 home games left for the Tennessee Titans this regular season, the thing that they do best, Derrick Henry, it travels. It is among one of the few things that do travel in professional football.
Yeah, 8 straight 100-yard games on the road. I mean, that was kind of the buzz stat afterwards is, yeah, you can take him anywhere, and he will find success for you. And I think, that's why I found myself kind of yelling at the screen in the fourth quarter, because he just kept getting carries. And I was thinking, you got to rest him, they've got some good, formidable running backs to come in, and Jerry McNichols and Foreman, and we've seen them find success. And so I think that just from a cautious standpoint, I want them to pull back a little bit, but God forbid we ask Mike Vrabel about that. Sacrifice to Ron Davenport for that question. But I do think it's something that you got to think about. And it's Mike Vrabel's MO too, to want to have guys available and ready to go when it counts. And we saw him do it last year when he, rested Derrick Henry against the Saints. It's something that he's preached, is that he wants guys available more than he wants to just kind of throw you out there and try to, dig the knife in a little bit, which kind of is what it seemed like in the fourth quarter, with continuing to bring 22 out there. But I think it's just because we know how important he is to this team and how important he'll be down the stretch.
Rexrode, now is your opportunity to to rub it in my face that you were right and I was wrong about paying Derrick Henry.
Oh, God, that's right. You had that dumbass opinion, didn't you? I would have forgotten that too.
It's because you're
old.
Well,
hey, it's a unique situation. I mean, I'm with you in general. I still think it's a rule that works in this league, but you got to look at what you are and who the back in question is. And look, I don't know if he's going to be this guy 3 years from now, but I feel like he's doing okay. He's got some mileage ahead of him, and I think Derrick Henry would have been a pro. Derrick Henry got paid, and some people look for when guys get paid. Does their performance fall off? That's what they said about Chris Johnson here a few years ago. Not surprised at all that he has taken it up a level. If he would have been playing on the tag this year, I think he would have been playing the exact same. But I think it's good for the whole locker room, frankly, that he got paid. And I think that was a little bit underrated on your part, if we're being serious, that these guys wanted him to get paid. These guys genuinely like him, genuinely understand how important he is to them. And so I think it's not just a Derrick Henry being happy move, but it's a team morale move, and it's the right move. I mean, the guy we'll see how long it goes. Who knows? But we know that it's more than just the random outlier who does have a longer career and has numbers that, frankly, can put you in Hall of Fame consideration. We're throwing around MVP and Hall of Fame already, talking about Derrick Henry. And it's probably a little early, but, man, the guy's really good.
Yeah, so Emily brought up the falling on the sword of Teron Davenport, which calls back to yesterday's, as we tape this on a Tuesday, Mike Vrabel's press conference. where somebody clearly pissed in his Cheerios, and he was not happy about it.
More than that.
When he showed up. See, now you're the one making shit jokes, Em. How's that taste? No pun intended there.
We can talk about. See, I do remember your dog. So I do remember that one.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle.
All right.
Anyway,
Yeah, okay.
Rexrode was the victim of the greatest amount of abuse yesterday. But I knew as soon as Mike Vrabel decided that he was going to give Teron Davenport hell, who I think the three of us can agree. Emily is thoroughly likable, but TD, I think, she said no. TD may be the most well-liked Titans media member from the standpoint of us, from fans, from the people that work for the Tennessee Titans. I feel like nobody really has a problem with Teron. Yes?
Oh, yeah.
Totally agree.
Maybe I would say comparable as far as just like lovable person you can't ever hate would be Eric, who is leaving us now, which is unfortunate. But two guys that I mean, you just can't possibly hate. So you're
accurate.
Right.
And yet Mike Vrabel,
Buck, on the other hand, a little different.
What'd you say to me?
Well, she said two guys you can't hate, and I said whereas Buck, on the other hand, maybe a little different.
I'm thoroughly beloved.
Move forward. Move on.
Anyway,
look at his hat.
But here's the thing with TD, guys, is and TD's also like TD loves football, I think, more than anyone I've come across.
Yeah. And
we all love football, and everyone around there loves football. TD loves football. And so he
loves football history.
Yeah. So and that's the thing, Vrabel has at various times snapped at, I'd say just about all of us, right? For here or there for something. I can't remember it ever with TD. I mean, and maybe I missed it, but I think there's he loves, there's like a football talking thing, right, with TD, which is doing a terrible job of verbalizing myself here.
Yeah.
This
is good promotion for your radio show that you now have weekdays, Monday through Friday on 102.5 The Game, 6 to 10 a.m. Rexrode and Robbie, or Robbie and Rexrode, whatever the hell it's called.
It's Robbie and Rexrode, 6 to 10 a.m. Thank you. Yes.
Subscribe, rate, and review wherever it is you get your podcast. Anyway, Mike bit off Teron's head yesterday, and then that's where things started to stew. And so Rexrode, nobody actually heard, I don't think, your question to Mike Vrabel that you were trying to get across before he absolutely steamrolled you and answered it within, and I timed it out because I had this cut up into several clips on my Twitter timeline. 3-minute diatribe about everybody sucks and you being a clown. What was the question that you were trying to ask him?
Okay, well, first of all, let's go back a day because, this started the day earlier. The Titans win, and to me, the key moment of that game was 4th down, 4th and 4. They're about to punt. They go. Tannehill, second read, hits Davis. They scored 35-14. That won the game. That killed the Colts, okay? And if you mess that up, if you don't get it, or if you kick a field goal or miss a field goal, whatever, Philip Rivers can easily get them a field goal. They're getting the ball. They can double up. It can be 28-24 really easily. All of a sudden, it's 35-14. That was the aggressive move by Vrabel that, to me, won the game. So I asked a question about that, and Vrabel's answer was a joke about, Stretch, I'm paraphrasing, Stretch, called in the double reverse. He made a double reverse Brett Kern joke, which is a direct shot at me because I've made that joke for many, many, many times, including on Robbie and Rexrode many, many times over the past few months, going back to the ridiculously. And let me just say, I went back to read the column from the day they played Tampa Bay, and they had the fake field goal, and Brett Kern got eviscerated by Devin White. It is just as dumb now. Vrabel can win 8 straight Super Bowls. It will remain an idiotic call of all time. Okay, so let's make sure that's clear. So he obviously has held a grudge for a long time and got that shot in. Great. So I decided, okay, I'll have a little joke. So I started my question with, so are you saying Stretch called the fake field goal? And sometimes I think Vrabel might laugh. Maybe not. I didn't deliver it very well. He just sat there. And so then I said, okay, here's my question. My question was about Arthur Smith and 3 straight games with scripted opening drives for touchdowns. And that's where he steamrolled me. And by the way, guys, the answer he gave in the middle of insulting me and trashing me, all that stuff, was actually the most detailed football answer he's ever given. Am I right? He talked about the entire game plan of the game.
Close to it. And that's the way he works. I think all three of us could attest to it in some form or fashion, where he will fight you on the front end of these responses, because it's almost like an obligation for football people to begrudgingly answer or begrudgingly give up small details that really don't matter in the larger scheme of things, but because they're football people and they have to protect all the state secrets at any cost, they cannot give you the thing, except when Mike Vrabel's gotten his joke in or gotten his shot in at one of us, whomever's asked the question, then typically he gives a pretty detailed answer on the back end. It's why I was texting some people in the organization yesterday about it, that I will take Moody Vrabel 10 times out of 10 if it means that we don't get this sedated version of him on the Zoom calls before practice. And the response that I got back was, no, we like sedated. It's the only break that we get.
Real quick, today I was in with Keith Carter, and Kim Smith wasn't calling on me, and it got all the way to the end. And so finally I got the last question. I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad you're not like Vrabel trying to shut me down. And Keith laughed. So I'd just like to say I appreciate you, Keith. And I think Kim did too, but she just muted herself. So
I was lucky enough to be on a Zoom call with Joe later that day with Candace Story Lee, and she liked the jokes a lot better, enough to where Alan George, the SID, had to actually mute the chat because she was getting so distracted. Rexrode talking about how much weight he has gained over the Thanksgiving holiday. So if anybody was worried that maybe you were upset and you were at home, thinking about, oh my gosh, this head coach that I cover doesn't like me, he was fine.
No, the bad jokes never stop. It's such an indictment of you that you choose the only professional time that we have on a day-to-day basis in these Zooms, in the limited Rona access that we get, to workshop your comedy routine. And it's not just in Titans, but it's in the Vandy thing too.
That is bullshit, Buck. That is bullshit. We love the chat. That is so much fun. Come on. You don't like the chat?
Oh, no, I love the chat.
Talk?
I hate you. I hate
Not everyone likes the chat.
I love the chat. I hate you.
You, come on, man.
Not everyone likes the chat,
Vrabel likes it too.
Not everybody.
You've got some serious journalists in there that are just very, that they want to ask the questions and
John Glennon cannot be considered a serious journalist at this point, when every question he starts, every question he asks starts with and then a lip smack that just resonates throughout every speaker, every microphone, every recording device across radio frequencies in Nashville, Tennessee. Just that he starts every question with, that makes me cringe every time. Johnny hates the chat. By the way, who do we think Mike hates the most?
Of the whole press corps?
Yes.
See, this is where I swear I'm not trying to be like boastful or vain. I've thought he's hated me the most the whole time.
Really?
Yep, absolutely.
Why do you feel that way?
Because, I can't help sometimes the smart ass comments that I make in my columns. Look, the one thing Vrabel can't do ever again is, and I don't know if he's even done this, but most guys in his position do. I don't read anything. He can't say that. He reads and hears a lot, clearly. So I feel like Kaharski likes to fancy himself the most hated, but I actually have never bought that.
No, I would say Joe too. I don't know. I just think it's a weird. You're welcome. Congratulations.
Yay!
Good for you. No, it's such a weird thing that Mike Vrabel is known amongst fans and a lot of people as like this tough football guy that only worries about football and winning and whatever. And the fact that he's reading our columns, remembering them from years ago, and bringing it back up, that he's holding these little petty grudges. I'm like, okay, he's. I know that the people are starting to realize has that little bit of like sneaky smart guy in him when he's, putting too many men on the field and all that sort of thing. But I don't know. I just think it's strange that he's, everyone thinks that it's so great that he's very hard-nosed, tough football guy, but he's holding grudges and being sassy with us.
He's a little sensitive. Who do you think it is,
Yeah.
Buck?
Who do I think it is? I do think, well, one, I not to betray any confidences here on the podcast, but Koharski did text me yesterday, probably about 10:30 last night, completely not understanding how I got so much run out of 5 minutes of Mike Vrabel ripping various media members, because I made it into a podcast now. I did it on the radio. I did it on the streaming show. I did it on Twitter for clicks. Like, I put it everywhere I could possible, and I got a lot of run out of it. And Paul essentially was saying to me that he felt that if this is how big a deal I'm going to make it, then I owe him at least 25 various shows for as often as he's been ripped. And the reason that is so funny is because we were not paying attention to Paul in those very, very fleeting moments, which gives me endless enjoyment. Because Paul wishes that Mike Vrabel hated him the most, I think, because it would just be one more thing for Paul to attach himself to. We have talked before, when Koharski's on the podcast, who is the greatest narcissist among us, and I think it is him.
That's easy.
10 out of 10. I will say, Rexrode, though, that I think it's not that politics ever make their way onto this podcast, but Mike Vrabel is very Trumpian in the way that he consumes all things local media. I saw him, you know what, I won't give that away, but I know that he reads and he watches and he listens, and I know that he and John Robinson both receive everything it is that we put out from a content standpoint every morning for them to peruse and go through and see what things that we have said and why we are wrong, and in columns from 2 years ago that they can cite, where I'm literally looking at this quote from Sunday afternoon in front of me. Well, we had a double reverse call with Brett, and I figured with him coming back from the IR and the risk that we would probably shouldn't do it. So Steck, not Stretch, Luke Steckel told me
he did say Stretch. That's a bad transcript. He said Stretch.
Yeah, he said Stretch.
Okay.
It's a bad transcript.
So told me to call a timeout and just throw it to Corey Davis. That is among the greatest shots from a meaningless NFC AFC game that they almost blew against the Buccaneers. And if not for Jameis Winston and Brashad Perryman's incompetence, the self-imposed forced fumble that they caused for themselves on the goal line in one of the most ridiculous sweeps I've ever seen in my life. That is the level of petty that I aspire to be. Mike Vrabel is
that's some petty.
That's some petty. That is some 10 out of 10 petty.
I love the follow-up that you got in as well when I'm reading the transcript right now, and it has in italics, this is him answering question on scripted drives. And then I answered, this is his answer. And then I answered what I felt like I wanted to answer your question to. That's it. That's the response. Also, I think I'm going to change my answer to Glennon just to be different. Because I don't know, when it comes to the press conferences, I don't know what he thinks about everyone's individual writing. But I think when it comes to press conferences, who he's generally always snarky with, I would say Glennon.
Now hold on. If you just went by that, it's Luke Worsham. Am I wrong?
That's my answer. I think he hates Luke.
Oh, no. I forgot.
Poor Luke. Come on.
I think he
Come on,
hates
Vrabel.
Luke.
Picking on a college kid.
No.
He answers his questions, though.
And the college kid picks on Vrabel. Like,
he does.
If anybody is undeterred by Mike Vrabel, and listen, there are times in my life I am not too big of a man to admit that I have been intimidated by Mike Vrabel at various points in my life. I think that's a totally reasonable thing for somebody to say. Luke Worsham, I am convinced, has never been intimidated by anybody in his life, because he will absolutely just dog Mike with these incessantly long wind-up questions that I swear to God he's regaling the entire play-by-play from drives before he gets there to ask Mike Vrabel, why do you insist on dropping Harold Landry into coverage this many times? Then Mike looks at him like he's this little pissant and says, well, how many times we drop Landry into coverage, Luke? And then on it goes. And Luke will go right back at him. It's among my favorite things out of our day-to-day interactions.
It's also interesting. So Vrabel is, I think some of this maybe is that they're playing well, they're winning, everybody's back on, that they're great. So coaches typically kind of they don't like that. They don't want their team to feel that way. By the way, did anyone ever say Vrabel sucks? Arthur Smith sucks. Oh, I sucked a couple weeks ago. You sucked. He sucked. Who said that? Who said they suck?
Not one person.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyway, it's interesting that there's that. But then with Luke, they win a game. They could win a game and play. I think when they beat Buffalo, I believe and I don't remember what it was. They could win and play flawlessly, and the one mistake, Luke will ask about that mistake,
right.
which I love about Luke. And so it was good win, Mike. But the 3rd and 4 there with the false start. I mean, it's just it's I love it, man. So like I think Luke asked the other day about getting off to a good start or turning it around, and Vrabel was like, "Yeah, we just beat the Ravens and Colts on the road. I'd say that's a pretty good start, Luke. Huh? What do you say, buddy?" Yeah, I love it.
It's like I love that Mike Vrabel thinks he has something to prove to Luke Worsham. It's the highlight of my media experience so far. Now,
do you think Vrabel is intentionally like pitting us against each other? Not that we're like against each other, but I feel like we talk about like the media relationship and ourselves a lot, right?
Oh, we're super.
I mean, you said you did a podcast
on it. Come on.
Okay.
No,
but
listen,
is this something that Vrabel's just trying to stare with a big old wooden spoon, trying to stir the pot?
No, I honestly think Mike Vrabel hates us all. I think it varies by day. I really do. Like, I think that that you are like John Harbaugh. Nobody is safe from being absolutely punked by Mike Vrabel at any given moment. If that's where Mike chooses to direct his ire, and I think that on any given day he could hate each of us more than he did the previous day, and it could be Emily one day, it could be me the next, it could be Joe, and then it'll always be Terry because Terry has the worst Zoom call connection. And again, like this podcast, the circle of life continues. But I will say we are awfully self-involved as a media corps, and I feel like this podcast is to blame.
It helps. It feeds it. It makes it feel okay.
Yeah,
you're enabling all of us, Buck.
That's what I do. I'm an enabler. I'm a giver. That's why I have the hat. Anyway, you talked about Candace Story-Lee, who, for those of you who would be ignorant to such things, is the athletic director at Vanderbilt University, and Derrick Mason, just for reasons that are unknown to me, got fired on a Sunday. I mean, outside of get shutting out by 40, what is it, 41-0?
Yeah.
The Missouri game. So there was plenty of cause to fire Derrick Mason. I honestly didn't think they'd do it this year, given COVID and opt-outs and everything that they've had to go on through. But I guess enough is enough. And so they do it in the midst of the Titans game on Sunday, which really pissed me off. Not because I don't think that Derrick Mason didn't deserve to lose his job, but because I needed it to at least happen on a Tuesday so I could get a show out of it and not have it bleed into all the other things that we need to talk about on a regular basis. Point being, though, is that Derrick Mason got fired after what some who would choose to agitate are calling a publicity stunt in Sarah Fuller, the women's soccer player for Vanderbilt, who was chosen as the place kicker because of all the things that Vandy's having to go through with the personnel that they lack at this point. It is said, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that she will again be on the roster for place kicking duties in their game this upcoming Saturday. I guess because you both are much more, even though I am technically a Vandy employee, I don't think this season, but every other season I have been. You guys have been paying attention to this much, much closer than I have. I guess whichever direction you want to take it, Em, whether it be from the Sarah Fuller angle or the Derrick Mason angle, but both are inherently interconnected and both are pretty interesting stories right now.
I mean, I feel obligated as a woman and a women's soccer player, obviously, to talk about the Sarah Fuller situation. And I think that, I don't know, I don't want to get super heated about it because I feel like there was a lot of, women warriors out there online that were doing the job.
That's what this whole thing is for. You're supposed to get pissed.
I need
animation.
Because I'm not pissed because I think I would have to have been like caught off guard or surprised by any of the responses in order to get like heated about it. I just kind of rolled my eyes. I mean, this is not the ideal situation for someone to have made history, but is it ever an ideal situation? Is it ever the most, the comfiest thing in the world where, this is laid out? She's been kicking her entire life. She's been called upon to do this. She's been playing football for forever. She's the right man for the job. No, she just started playing football 3 days before she was thrown out on a football field. She clearly knows the motion of kicking, but the balls are considerably different. The uniform and the pads that she has to wear is there's so many things that were kind of setting her up for failure that I was just proud of her to be out there in the first place, and whatever happened afterwards, it reminds me a lot of the Alex Smith situation, where I didn't need to see any football from him, but the fact that he made the roster and came back was already comeback player of the year material for me, and anything beyond it is just a bonus. But I think that it was important that it happened, just because, you know, it's really hard being the first. And I think that there's going to be so many people that are watching that can say, okay, I can do that. Full disclosure, we had two girls that I played soccer with competitively that kicked for their high school football teams, because they had done that their entire high school careers. It was fun. But it was never a thing where they said, okay, I'm going to go on and try to attempt to do this in college. Well, now somebody can get pulled off the street to do this and kick in, you know, a Power 5 football game. Why is it the craziest thing in the world to try to go achieve that dream in college? And so I think that just the fact that it happened and that somebody said that it was okay and we'll try it and we'll see what happens, I think that speaks volumes and can only, you know, to not be super cheesy, but can only inspire other people to know that if they do the work and they do everything ahead of time to prove that they're worthy of that position, that it's not the craziest thing in the world to picture a female as a kicker. And for the people saying, why her? Because it was a publicity stunt or whatever, open up the internet at some point. There's not a men's soccer team, so that was not an option. Nobody else was on campus. And if I'm trying to find a last minute kicker, heck yeah, I'm going to the soccer team. And the first person that I'm asking is the goalkeeper, because they kick the ball the hardest, the furthest, they punt, they do everything that's necessary. Also, she's 6'2", which I think is like considerably taller than a lot of NFL kickers that are out there. So I wasn't too concerned about contact. She's 6'2". I mean, I'm not going to say her weight because I don't know it, and I doubt that they put that on a roster for women's soccer. I'd be pissed if they did that for me.
My height, probably less than me, I would imagine.
Yeah, but I'm like, she's not fragile. If you ever watch the position of goalkeeper too, I mean, they get, you know, cleats to the face. You know, it's obviously very different, and I'm well aware that it's a different situation when it comes to football. I'm not naive enough to think that, but I just think that, of course, it was a no-brainer. Give her a tryout. They said she did great in practice. We have no reason but to trust them. Not like Mike Vrabel, where we're not quite sure if he can evaluate kickers in practice. But
ooh, I like the shot.
Punters, maybe. I
hope you're still listening, Vrabel.
Particular. Well, apparently he is now.
Hi, Mike.
I don't know, maybe he's got like bugs in my apartment or something. But no, to wrap it up, it was an important move. It's not going to be perfect. It wasn't. It was just a big thing to show that it can be possible, and I don't think that that's the last time we'll see it.
Jackie Robinson-esque, hey, Rexrode.
Yeah, no, that's I don't agree at all with that. That's overstating things. To me, it was a cool story, and I think it's really cool that she was able to step in and do it. I got very frustrated by idiots on this, and probably pay idiots too much mind. I mean, I actually was still going at it back and forth today on Twitter with like, clearly it was. I mean, here's the thing. I did a lot of reporting on this and I wrote some things about it, and it wasn't a publicity stunt. It was totally out of, like Emily just laid out. It was out of necessity. Some people say they have a punter. Most punters can't do place kicking. Like Emily said, and I talked to Darren Ambrose, the women's soccer coach, the mechanics are almost identical. And so that is why we see soccer players all the time. By the way, a bunch of 5'7" pipsqueaks who I've never heard anybody, oh my God, he's going to kick off. What's going to happen to him? He better run off the field.
He should lay down or run off.
Lay down, run off the field. Okay.
Greg Joseph looks like somebody that you would handle with care, that you would bubble wrap him. And Cody Parkey, all of these kickers that were not Ryan Suckup, like statuesque Ryan Suckup. Most kickers are very, very small, fragile individuals.
What about Rodrigo Blankenship? We just saw him up close and personal on Sunday. That's not a large human being.
No. Most of them, yeah. So look, I mean, this was out of necessity. They don't have a men's soccer team. They don't have walk-ons available. Students were off campus. No one else could do it. She stepped in and apparently hit 15 of 17 at one point. She hit a 38-yarder. For anybody who has tried or hasn't tried to kick a field goal, 38-yarder is That's big hard. Deal. Very few humans can do that, honestly. But Vanderbilt's PR department, of course, jumped all over this, and so I think that fed the perception of the PR stunt or whatever you want to call it. But of course they're going to do that. I mean, that's their job, is to find any positive story, and around that football program, here's an opportunity. It does not mean that it was orchestrated from the start. It's just infuriating. And I thought Sarah handled it incredibly well. And, people got mad about her talking to the team too. And I will say, like, any sort of newcomer coming in and talking to a team at halftime to me is like, wow, really? But I think that's an indictment of what's going on, what's been going on in the program, right? I mean, why is that bad on her? I don't understand that. Like, good for her.
Was there anybody taking the position were there people legitimately taking that position? Because
it wasn't her place. Like, it wasn't her place to say anything. You've got an SEC champion in your locker room telling you how you should act. I mean, that maybe you should listen. I mean, that was a huge indictment.
Nobody in that locker room other than her is an SEC champion. Damn sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm impressed how shielded you are from idiots, Buck, because my God, it feels like a fucking avalanche to me out there.
Well, it's my thing. My thing with it is, I'm a lot removed from I've obviously paid attention to the story. I watched the game on Saturday, and I, of course, hugely supportive of Sarah Fuller and everything that she's tried to do. And it's not just because in any other year I get a paycheck from Vanderbilt. It's not anything like that. But outside of that, I watched the game, and my sphere, I have a lot of idiots in my sphere, but this particular sphere I did not wander into so much as to make fun of Jared Stillman for the Jackie Robinson tweet that I alluded to earlier in the program, which was completely and totally asinine for a great many reasons, mostly because it came out of the mouth of our dear friend Jared Stillman, who, by the way, tried to lobby that into an appearance on this podcast, which I had to tell him was not going to happen. Anyway.
Wow, you were really throwing him under the bus.
Yeah, but I love him, and he knows that. And he tried to, and he's trying to give me shit about Matt Patricia as the next Titans defensive coordinator publicly, like he's going to win some kind of argument with me. So of course I'm going to take him out on the podcast. This is how these things work, Joe. Anyway, so outside of consuming it and loving it as a story and appreciating the historical significance of it, there wasn't really a lot of engagement from me on Twitter about it, other than to see people like you feuding on the internet with the people who were pushing back on it. Mm-hmm. And all of the things I saw. I can't remember the female journalist that posted a picture that she put up. I think it was either on her handle or Sarah Fuller's handle, of the picture of her in the Vanderbilt uniform, and then the comments as a side-by-side, and all of the awful, wretched things that were being said in the comment section about it, which is just so typical of the and not that I know the typical female experience in sports. Emily could, of course, speak to it much better than me, but we all know the grime and the disgustingness that happens, especially on the internet, as it relates to women in sports. And so all of that, I just kind of said, people like Joe are going to fight this battle. People like Emily are going to fight this battle. If I need to get involved, I am absolutely down for the cause. I am here for the smoke. And everybody who thinks that way is just an idiot, as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't get into it as much on Twitter as I might normally in any other situation.
There's still time. The toxic man boys who can't handle a woman in their cherished football they've had quite a few days here.
Yeah. And I do want to say, I know that we're always ragging on you, Joe, but I genuinely do appreciate the fight that you're giving and the fact that you are so spirited about it. Just because anytime it comes from someone like me, I try to tiptoe around it, because it sounds like some crazy feminist rant if I go off on people for not respecting women. I mean, you have to kind of toe the line between standing up for her, but then also being like she can fight her own battles, and that it's not coming from the best situation. If it's just, well, of course you're celebrating her, you're female, you played soccer, like of course you're going to support her. It has nothing to do with it. But it is kind of just the situation that we get as women in sports, and some of the difficulties that go with that. And, I'm not going to get too in the weeds of it, but essentially perfection is something that is a quality that they look for above just being in the position and getting there. And I think that that's the thing that we need to separate, is that she didn't have to be perfect, and she wasn't. And it's really unfair to ask that of her. But the fact that she was in that position in the first place and was asked and for the most part earned it based on necessity, and that she was the most qualified for the job on campus at the time, I think it's okay to recognize that as just being awesome and being an awesome story, and not worry as much about exactly what it looked like. And that's kind of, what we face in this career too, is you feel like if you are a woman working in sports that you don't have a long leash to screw up, because you're already just lucky enough to be in this position that you've also got to be perfect and not, take a wrong misstep or anything, or else it's just, well, it's because she's a woman, and it immediately goes back to that. And so I think that that's kind of what she faced, and the reason that I wasn't all that frustrated about it, because it's, part
it's
of life.
Typical experience at this point.
Exactly. And
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't
No.
mean to interrupt you, but the fact that you had said earlier, you appreciate Joe for taking up the cause the way that you did, because you said, there's a line that you almost feel like you have to toe. Well, that inherently is the problem.
Yep.
Right? Women in sports feel like that they have to toe that line, and people like Joe, or not to put myself in something like this, but if we take up that cause for our friends or on the behalf of people that we know and our friends who are women in sports as well, then it somehow further legitimizes the cause or the argument that we've decided to take up, because we decide that we would deign to enter into that sphere and try and take on these man boys, as Rexrode call them. And you know how it stops first by people like Joe Rexrode coming onto this podcast and say that Emily Proud looks different on the podcast. You are what you hate, Rexrode, you sexist pig.
Oh God!
Whoa, that took a turn.
Yeah, geez, I didn't think you'd throw that one at me. Hey, I appreciate what you said, Emily. And I've been in I'm old, been in here. I mean, it's dozens of amazing friends and colleagues who are women in this business, and I think Twitter, just like a lot of things, magnifies some things, some realities. But like, I could sit there and tweet whatever. And for example, like my coworker, Nicole Auerbach, she could tweet something about COVID or whatever. And like the responses, the vitriol difference there, it's incredible. It really is. And it's just enough already. But that's also the problem with that forum and others, is like, you're never going to get rid of it all. Sometimes it's like, is it better to ignore? Like that's what sucks to hear Emily say, like, I hate that. I hate that you have to think that way. Like, maybe I should not fight this one, because you know what I mean? Like, it sucks. Like, it shouldn't have to be like that, but that's reality. And so I've struggled too, just in general, with like, do you pay mind to this stuff and give it more, really in a way, give it more juice by fighting against it? Or is it better sometimes to, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure that out, but sometimes, it gets too emotional to do anything else.
Well, the fact that you're thinking about that is definitely the first step. And I'm not out here to say that it's impossible and this is such a tough world to be a woman in by any means. There's a ton of advantages as well. I feel like we're pretty no, I'm the least depressed person. I'm okay. But no, I just think that it's important that there is discussion, and that there's people that are willing to stand up for you, that don't look like you and don't understand your circumstances, and they want you to genuinely learn. And I think that that's the most important thing, of course. And so that's why I do appreciate both of you guys, that you're actually like taking a step back and more from people that just want to analyze the kick and say, well, if she's in this position, then she must be amazing and perfect. But to take a step back and realize, okay, the whole situation wasn't amazing and perfect. So I think just the fact that she was like, yep, let's do it, which is something that Derrick Mason commended her for as well after the game, is that she could have very easily said no. And that's a tough situation to be in. To be the first of anything is difficult. And I had a great conversation with the founder of Play Like a Girl, which is the organization that she shouted out on her helmet. And the coolest thing that she said to me was something that they preach to their women that they mentor this year, is that this year is going to be the last year of firsts. This is what's going to happen. We have a female going into the White House, which is pretty exciting next year. I know we're not supposed to talk about politics, but I can be excited about women. And then we saw the first, then we saw the first female kicker in a Power 5 game. And so I truly hope that we're at this point where we get to continue to shout out trailblazers and people busted through the glass ceiling. So
you know what, oh, I'm sorry, Emily. And you know what's cool too is Sarah, basically with this whole thing, is like she's like Vrabel after the Super Bowl, just like double middles, and hey, I did it, I had fun, whatever you guys want to talk about it.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Well, I don't know if Rexrode's awesome. Em's pretty awesome, but we appreciate we appreciate both of their time here on a regular basis here on the podcast. You can hear Robbie and Rexrode, 6 to 10 a.m. on ESPN 102.5 The Game. You can subscribe, rate, review to the Robbie and Rexrode podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast. You can read Joe Rexrode on theathletic.com, where I am a proud subscriber. Mike Vrabel is a proud subscriber. Emily Proud is a proud subscriber. And he has a very, very good column on the situation at Vanderbilt and everything that has gone down with Sarah Fuller that I invite you to read. You can watch Emily Proud, by the way, because most of you will not read because, sometimes reading is hard. You can watch Emily Proud on TV, and she will tell you all the things that you need to know about all things local sports and the continued fight for equality for women in sports on WKRN, and occasionally shots at Mike Vrabel for being Captain Obvious on what's the name of the Saturday program that I was watching?
TN Nation after the late news every Saturday night. That's where we actually get 30 minutes to just talk Titans. Teron Davenport's on that show. Mark Mariani's on that show. It's a fun show.
WKRN Channel 2 here in Nashville. Thank you, friends.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.